Hey everybody, welcome back to the Very Good Table. I am Ryan Doyle, about to get explosive with the one, the only Super Geek Mike. Everybody, what's up, man? How you
Hello.
feeling?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm great. I'm great. We just had a long, rambling conversation about all things D&D and Critical Role. Um, Good times. Everyone, check out part one, but you don't have to enjoy this because we're starting over, man. It's a brand new episode, brand new day. Let's go. Amazing.
Let's
Check
do
it
it.
out. Um, Mike, you were kind enough to contribute to my Dragon Week video recently, and you, for a long time now, you changed your background. And I don't know how deep we want to get into this, but you've been
Sure.
flying the flag, my man.
I have been.
And
It is on the screens in front of me, so it can't be part of the background for this video. But yes, I have the protect the I can't talk the protect trans kids icon on my wallpaper. This is the I've been fumbling with mouths with my words all day, and I was like, no, I have an interview today. I have to talk to Ryan. I have to go
uh,
form sentences today.
maybe. Okay, so again, I just am assuming that you know who Mike is, but there are links down below to his YouTube channel. If you've been paying any attention there, you know, relatively new parent, which means I'm going to just assume sleep deprived. For me, the first thing that goes is word recall. I just start flowing
Yeah.
stuff. So you get a pass as far as I'm concerned, man. You're good.
Perfect. Thank you, thank you.
You're ushering in a new human life into adulthood, and
Yes.
hey, maybe not everyone did such a
Almost
great.
14 months old.
Wow. Wow.
Will will
Cool.
be will be 14 months old by the time this video comes out, I believe.
Time flies, man. I'm sure it's faster for you than for me over here, but
Wild.
so I'm just curious much how much heat are you getting for that? Because that's something that's like near and dear to my heart. Everyone knows that I'm like pretty damn far left. I don't make a big deal out of it because that's not like typically what I'm here to talk about, but like I'm
Hmm.
absolutely willing to, and I don't. Honestly, you are partly responsible for my position because it is
Okay.
something that as like a public figure feels like way too strong of a word for what I'm doing, but like talking head, whatever, someone who's putting
Yeah.
their ideas and face and words out on the internet, it's something you consider like how engaged with everything am I gonna be?
Yeah.
And you've done a few videos like very specifically on this,
Yeah.
and you're like, look, I don't want you to accidentally hang out and then get upset. Like I rather you know right away.
Yeah.
And you know, if you let Nazis in the bar, it's a Nazi bar.
Yep. And I think also I get a lot of comments that are things like, I didn't come here for your politics. I'm like, channel's free. You get it all for free. It's fine.
Yeah,
You didn't have
skip.
to ask for my politics. It's right there for you. But it's like that's often people who probably don't agree with my politics. Okay, I'm not particularly upset that someone doesn't agree with my politics. They can feel however they want. If they're upset that they don't agree with my politics, that's not really my problem.
Mm,
I understand why people who do agree with me sometimes just want to break from it. That I do get. It didn't used to, and then we had a very exhausting election, and now we're in an exhausting era. I get it. But unfortunately, as tariffs have proven, our industry isn't immune from being affected by politics. Like even set aside questions of for a moment questions of discrimination in the hobby and all of that sort of stuff and the sort of elements of toxicity in the fandom and the fact that they're absolutely like anti-trans talking heads, and I want you to know that I'm not one of them. Set all of that stuff aside. If your argument is I just want to think about D&D and I don't want to think about politics, well, there's a person in power in the United States of America who we didn't have to be in power, but he is, and now we got fucked on tariffs. Because he doesn't understand them, and he is dumb and bad, and like I've seen people try to go 12 rounds with me about politics in my comments for various like sometimes people are just like I don't want to hear about it. I'm like, oh, okay, whatever. Like that's fine, but I'm not gonna stop doing it. But sometimes people try to be like, oh, you're wrong about whatever, and I'm like, I have receipts. Sorry. Like if you're gonna sit here and argue that like he was somehow good at being the president the first time, I am just gonna point out that no, he was not. And and it kind of goes for lots of stuff. I've had so many people come and be like, you know, protect trans kids. Oh, blah, 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 blah. Trans people are predators or whatever. And I'm like, actually, bunch of bullshit. Here's the facts. And
Yeah.
I don't mute those people. I just let them be wrong and have my comments up there as well, because eventually they stop commenting and I got the last word because I actually know what I'm talking about.
That that is admirable because I know the price. I know the cost of energy and mental well-being it takes. And I used to do a lot more of that as someone who is, you know, privileged by a million aspects. Like I did
Yeah, same.
feel like I have less literally skin in the game, right? As
Yeah.
a cis hetero normie, whatever. Like, sure, I'm a vanilla white dude. I can take some heat for some other people who like maybe can't get up and to talk as much without feeling the threat of it all.
Hmm.
But like, ooh, yeah, it's just ugly and gross so fast. And the
It helps
idea,
that I sorry, not to cut you off, but like
no,
it helps that I don't try to assume these people are coming in bad faith. I assume they have been fed misinformation. Because there's a lot of stuff about trans people in general. Just this is the topic. There's a lot of topics like this, but especially with trans people, I've noticed there's either misunderstandings, straight up misinformation, or common sense stuff that doesn't actually bear out with facts. Like,
mm,
and I get where all of those come from. I'm very plugged into like people who know what they're talking about on trans subjects, like trans YouTubers and people who actually like have trans writers for their channels and all these things, and people who actually talk about the various trans panics and all these things. And I know about all of the facts, like probably not all the facts because I'm not trans. And even if I'm sure individual trans people have different experiences, am fairly well informed as one can be for a layman who's not actually in like the business of analysis of the news or anything like that, or who's not actually like, you know, writing legislation or affected by legislation in any way. But I tend to know a lot about the like, well, actually, when you're saying this happens with trans people, it's not it's not true. And this is why. And I'm just I know a lot of the misinformation at this point. I don't know where it all comes from because again, some of it is like, well, but like trans people in sports, like, wouldn't they have biological advantages? And it's like, first of all, no, not necessarily, because it's the studies are not complete, but like that's just an example that's very popular because people just think boys stronger than girls, even though that's not always the case. It can be. I get where it comes from. It's not true with trans people necessarily because A, there are trans people who talk about this just anecdotally and say like their body changes when they went on hormones. They haven't necessarily like competed all the time, but like they have enough knowledge to know like I went on hormones and it was harder to run. So like your body changes. Does that mean
mm.
you're better or worse? I don't know. I don't care. Michael Phelps is a literal mutant from like Planet X, and we still give him gold medals. So who fucking cares? Like state law, federal law says that if you don't have a boys team for soccer and a boy wants to play soccer, he gets to play on the girls team. So clearly the government doesn't actually fucking care either. It doesn't really matter.
Mm.
It matters because and also like who fucking care? I know I'm from California and my football team sucked ass, but and maybe if you're from like somewhere where football teams actually like get scholarships, it's more of a case. After school sports are fucking daycare. They're a way to keep kids occupied and have them engage in team activities. That's the point. That's why the only people who are upset about this are parents or liars. Um, and the people who come out and defend the trans students are their fellow teammates because it's literally a team activity. You taught them all to be teammates. Of course, they're gonna fight for each other. But it's like it's just one of those things where it's like, yeah, this is not true. Or maybe it is, and also doesn't matter. Like the arguments they have is like there's this woman, who's a right wing commentator who's always like, "Oh, I lost a medal to a trans athlete. You tied for fifth. The two of you tied for fifth. If trans
Wah.
people are like better at all sports, they wouldn't be tying for fifth. I feel insane. What are you talking about? Sometimes trans people win at sports and sometimes they lose. They've been playing sports since at least the 70s. That's like 50 years. Nobody cares until some people decided to make it their whole identity. Like, it doesn't matter. But again, that's one of those things where it's like, I understand why, if your only understanding of this is from like third grade biology or like, middle school science, I can understand where you're coming from. You're wrong, but I don't blame you for being wrong. What
Mhm.
matters more is what you do with that information, where I just come in and say, you're wrong. Here's why. And sometimes people keep pushing and then they'll start pushing on other things. And I'm like, oh, I see. You just don't like me for being on the left. Okay, that's fine. Like, if we're talking about trans people and suddenly you start talking about how the folks at Pathfinder said they didn't like the JD Vance played their game, you were never just mad about the trans stuff. Obviously.
And it's
Also, I don't work for Pathfinder. What do you come? What do you come at me for that for? I barely even play it. And also, yeah, fuck JD Vance. He sucks.
yeah, and it's also just like clearly
Like,
like, oh,
if your
I'm
problem is
losing
that a
this
game
argument. I'm going to
said
start a new
fascists
one.
shouldn't play their game and not the fascists themselves, I don't think you're adding much to the conversation.
And
And
it's
if you don't
always
think JD Vance is a fascist, I ask you, what he is then, because he's definitely a racist liar who wants to limit the rights of human beings. So I don't know, man. Feels like he
yeah.
fits the definition pretty well for lots of reasons.
We can quibble about the definitions of things, but it's like you're already have proven you don't have a leg to stand on when you're like
Right.
reaching for like, well, really, he's an anacro-technical fascist. It's like,
Sure.
get out of here. Get
Yeah.
like, come on. Okay, cool. Sure, 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 sure,
He's
sure, sure,
racist
sure.
and bad. Let's start with that then.
And it's fascinating. So I have, in the last year especially, like I've sat down with so many fellow creators. Oftentimes we're meeting for the first time. We'll like tiptoe up to the politics thing in some
Yeah.
conversations because it keeps interjecting itself in our game. So yeah, I'd love if politics stayed out of D&D a little bit more than it did. But like the starter set's going to cost $150 now.
Right.
Like, come on. Anyway, I find that this practice of, if you're doing it remotely, right, there's a million ways to play D&D, but oftentimes you are projecting yourself into the role of somebody else, firing those mirror neurons, developing a little bit of empathy, understanding that people are built different, have different mins and maxes, whatever you want to, stretch the metaphor. And like fun, like, okay, you're from California, I'm from New York originally.
Hmm.
Different population. Like I feel very blessed to come from a place where everybody was hanging out together. You couldn't help but meet everybody, and not everybody
Yeah.
has that privilege, and they're a little more isolated. But like, I'm not in New York anymore, and man, this hobby has put me at the same table with such a diverse range of ages and orientations and backgrounds and whatever, just like brain types. It has been
Hmm.
a hugely diverse, enlightening experience, and to be upset by that is so foreign to me. Like the
Yeah.
amount I have gained by the richness of this community and the diversity of this community is huge. Like, okay, I'm telling different jokes than I was when it was just me and my three friends in a basement when we were 14.
Right.
Okay, cool. Like, that's fine. I'm not, whatever. I'm not going to repeat those jokes, but
Yeah.
like, a small price to pay. Okay,
Very
cool.
much the same.
Yeah. Like, it's very fascinating to me. So
And I think
yeah.
that, I have definitely been more spicy. I've had my spicy days responding to comments, but recently I got some comment, I think from the Dragon Week video, especially because more people were coming to that one who didn't know my channel.
Mm, hmm.
And they would sort of, say something that I didn't agree with, and I would respond. And a couple of them responded like, you know what? I appreciate that I came on a little too strong, and you've been more respectful than I expected. And it's like, cool. We're not going to agree on a lot of stuff still. We still have a vast gulf until we're on the same page about some of our elected officials. But like, I have tried to be a little bit more like reasonable, because I think it is so easy for us to see people we disagree with as irrational. And I want to try to not fall into that definition so easily because it makes communication just a lot easier. Hard to do. Sometimes people are um stubborn in unproductive ways. Um and at a certain point you have to wash your hands. But that's true of any kinds of YouTube comments. I've had people, especially the people who disagree with my use of certain, thumbnails and titles and call it clickbaity, and I'm like, you didn't watch the video. And they're like, well, why would I watch the video? And I'm like, I'm not going to debate you. If you don't like the thumbnail and the title, that's fine. But like, I'm not going to sit here and debate the subject when you haven't actually watched my video. Like, it doesn't make sense. I made 20 minutes or 40 minutes in some cases, because I have very little self control. It took me 20 minutes or whatever it is to make my point. You're not getting my full point from the thumbnail or the title. Otherwise, it would be a much shorter video. If you want to come and debate that stuff, that's totally fine. Let's have that conversation. If you're not interested in it, that's fine too. Live your life. I don't care. But like, I'm not gonna sit here and go 12 rounds when like you don't know my full argument. It's not worth it. Have a great day. And so
Yeah,
like, and think that it's just the nature of the internet. I'm again, we're not breaking new ground here, but you and I are exposed to it a lot. People feel unburdened from social norms
mm,
on the internet in ways that I would hope they are not in real life. And sometimes when you just act like a human being back at them, they'll be like, "Oh, like yeah, man, like sorry that I'm a human and I didn't just." I think that a lot of people just don't expect you to respond, and sometimes I do because like I don't know, man. I'm walking with the baby. I'm trying to get him to sleep, and he's not doing anything interesting. So I might as well just look at might as well respond to a YouTube comment at the moment because I can't like watch TV right now. But I'm trying to not spend so much time in the comments, trying to limit that time,
mm.
so I don't lose full uh chunks of blocks responding. But if there's something that it's like worth responding to, I just try to do it respectfully.
Inside me there are two wolves, and one is like, just remember that everyone is a human, right? That's kind of my like governing thesis in the first place anyway. But like, especially on the internet, you're talking, there's a human on the other end of this faceless black mirror that you're
Yeah,
talking. Even if there is a face, like this is still a person. I'm a dude. I have ideas. They're not all right. I have
yeah,
feelings too. Whatever. The other wolf is like, hey person, hey fellow human, why are you spending your time this way? How much time out of your day do you spend commenting on videos you haven't watched to feel angry about it? How much
right.
time do you spend thinking about where 14-year-olds use the bathroom? Because for me,
Seriously,
it's zero, unless someone brings it to my attention. I'm like, that's
yeah,
ridiculous. Like, I'm not worried about that.
yeah.
Why are you?
It's there's a great video from Steve Shives, which uh he's a great channel who does Star Trek stuff that I don't watch because I've watched very little Star Trek, but also does great political videos. He put one out very recently for us recording this where it was called "Can We Just Be Normal?" Like, can we just? And he recounted a story of his parents being one of those provocateurs in sort of a social situation, and his response to that was, "Can we just be normal? Like can you just not give a shit where people shit?" Like, it wasn't that, but it's that kind of, it's the exact same thing. It's like, I don't know. And by the way, I'm trying to practice what I preach. This is not something I have done consistently, but I'm trying because, man, I don't know why people still voted for Trump, but I'm speaking with a person who is in my life, who I grew up with, who's older than me, but was a family friend, and the idea that they would have voted for someone who I think is bad doesn't make sense to me. So I like literally was like, "Can you tell me why?" And they wrote me a letter because they were like, "I don't want to do this on social media." I'm like, "That's fair. We should all be off social
Hmm,
media. It's awful." So like,
hmm,
they wrote me a letter. I need to respond, but like, just trying to like actually talk to them and like find out. And like, yeah, my response is 11 pages long because they're wrong about a lot of stuff, like factually wrong about stuff. But
hmm.
again, just trying to like just trying to treat people like human beings. I don't think that's the easiest thing always because we do feel so um these are real subjects, these are real issues, they do affect people's lives, and we get spicy about them sometimes. I completely get why people get spicy in both directions, but like, just trying to not be as fiery as I have been in the past. And generally, that I think goes a long way towards, at the very least, breaking people's preconceptions about what they expect from the left. You know?
Yes, because there's a lot of team sports going on, which I don't think helps anybody. The whole idea of like my side's
Yeah.
the right is the correct side is like
Right.
well examine why do I know everything about all of your beliefs that are all disconnected if I know one of them and I know that means I know all of them. You haven't necessarily thought about all of them. You've just accepted a system of belief, which is comforting and easier than thinking thoughts,
Mhm.
but maybe
And
isn't great.
everyone's relationship with electoral politics is different. I did not care for Joe Biden. Not my favorite dude. Um,
Mm-hmm.
Voted
Mm-hmm.
for him because I didn't have uh, another compelling option that I felt was worth it, and I still felt that my vote mattered. I mean, I live in California, so not a lot, but it's still important to vote.
So actually, no.
Um, right, but there was someone in my, when I was discussing trans stuff, and someone who voted for Trump was like, well, so whatever. I don't hate trans people. And it's like, okay, I'm glad for that. The guy you voted for does. Like, that does matter. Like, yeah, I voted for, Obama McDrone strike, but he didn't run on that.
Right.
Like, there is I think we are still on some level, we have to reckon with who we voted for and what they did. Like, hey, I voted for Mr. Gaza genocide, the first one, because the current guy's doing it too. But like, we're still, I didn't know he was going to do that. He didn't run on that. That I think is a notable distinction to make. Where it's like, I voted for Ms. God's the genocide, because I thought the other guy was going to be worse. Turns out he is. I was right about that. Sorry, I didn't like it either. But that's how the trolley problem works. You don't get to walk away.
I mean, you do, but
Because
then
I've seen people say
everybody
that.
dies.
I've seen people say that, and they're like, I just didn't want to be part of the trolley problem. I'm like, okay, I I get that. I get voter apathy completely. That's not how the trolley problem works, my dude. Like, I'm sorry, I don't say that to be facetious. I just don't. I don't think we're ever going to agree about like relative morality. That's okay. This is a complicated subject, but like walking away from the trolley problem is rarely the solution.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I am
It
sympathetic to
sucks.
that, but I
It
don't think
it
it
sucks.
sucks.
Right?
It's all
Politics
bad.
sucks. Like, you will get no argument from me. I was not nuts about Kamala Harris. No pun intended with the coconut thing.
Oh,
Which I never understood. I don't understand social media anymore. I'm old. Um, but like, people seem to like it. I didn't really get it, and that's not me like retroactively. Like, at the time I was like, I don't understand the coconut thing. I'm
oh,
not going to use it because like I don't. Can I? I don't know. Is this a girl thing? I don't. Is it a young person thing? I don't know what this is. I
is
don't get it.
this
I've heard the
appropriation? I don't
quote.
even
I've
know.
heard the full
Yeah.
quote. I don't know why this is a meme. I feel like it's like the first time I heard Gangnam Style, I'm like, I don't know what we're doing. I don't know what's happening here, so I'm just gonna move on.
Oh Christ. Let's move on because I could do this all day, especially with a guy like you. But let's build something together.
I will say, for those of you who want to know a little bit more about the issues, be able to handle these sorts of debates when they come up a little bit more, I recommend the channels Some More News. It's a
Mm.
YouTube channel. I recommend Steve Shives, which I mentioned, and I meant what is she called? Leja Miller, but I need to look at the spelling. Leja Miller, Leeja Miller. She's a lawyer who makes videos about sort of activist causes. Those are a good starting point for sort of understanding how to potentially tackle some of these subjects. Um, just a recommendation for those who are a little more curious about them. Even if you disagree with me, I still say go check out Some More News, find a video about a subject where you vastly disagree with me, watch it, see what you think.
Information is everything in this day and age. I mean, we're kind of in like the post information era, whatever, but like there's a lot of misinformation and disinformation and just knowledge hygiene is important,
Right.
folks. Check your
It's
sources.
it's also it's tough because there are times where it's not worth your energy. There's a great quote: "You cannot reason someone out of a position they didn't reason themselves into."
Mm,
Right? And there are some times where someone thinks They came to a decision logically and they came to it emotionally. That's okay, right? I've seen this 1,000 times. If you're a fan of Critical Role, or at least aware of Critical Role, you probably are aware that Marisha Ray got a lot of hate. Some people just didn't like Keyleth. That's okay. You don't have to like Keyleth. It snowballed and manifested into like a huge harassment. Not even campaign because it wasn't coordinated. It was just this like sort of pervasive tone, and that's the thing I have more of a problem with, and the way that was handled. And I made a whole video about that. I'm not saying you have to like Keyleth. I'm not even saying you have to like Marisha Ray. I don't care at this point. It's not worth my energy. But what I've seen is a lot of people try to argue the logical reasons why. And I'm like, well, but if you didn't like that, these other players did the same thing. Or if you
What's
did like
different
that,
about them?
you're also mistaken because that's actually not what happened, right?
Mm.
Like there's a scene. It felt like she was debating the rules, like with Matt for like 2 or 3 episodes in a row. Like, it felt like she was debating every episode. Well, no, it happened 3 times in 2 episodes, and she was right about a lot of those. It just felt different, and I get that. It's a feeling, and that's okay for feelings to inform decisions. Like, just don't trick yourself into thinking that it's completely logical. Like, we have emotional reactions to things. That's okay. It's normal. But I think, and we're all guilty of this, when we don't like something, or something bothers us, or something makes us feel uncomfortable, we try to figure out why. We try to figure out what is the reason. It's very, very difficult for anyone to do that successfully. It
Mm.
is very, very difficult to actually get to the bottom. Like, I feel like I'm pretty good at figuring out if I don't like a movie, trying to figure out why, right? But there are some times where it's just not possible. Like, I can't sit here and be like, the reason I don't like Tim Burton movies, that's just, he just doesn't make movies that appeal to me that much. Like, I can't sit here and debate, like, well, there was this one moment in Beetlejuice that really, I'm like, no, man, I just don't really click with his movies. It's completely emotional reaction. I don't have a strong feeling about them. He's just not my thing. I like some of them. I like Big Fish. Night Before Christmas is pretty good, but I get sort of wibbly on whether that's a Tim Burton movie. People call it that, but it's he's not one directed by him, but he worked on it a lot. Like you know, whatever. Draw your lines wherever you want to. At a certain point, sometimes you just say, "Yeah, it's an emotional reaction." I don't really sit here and defend it. I can't sit here and explain to you why I like the 2003 Daredevil movie. It is objectively bad. I cannot defend it. I am still going to like it at some point. Sometimes we are informed by emotional decisions, and that's okay as long as that's where we leave it. But when you start getting into the facts, sometimes the facts don't support your arguments. Again, that's because you came to them post hoc. I've had some people be like, I just respond. I'm like, listen, I think the reason you don't like Keyleth is because, like, you didn't like this Keyleth moment is because you already didn't like Keyleth. That's okay. Like, whatever. Who cares? Don't make it your entire personality, but whatever. But I don't think that moment explains hatred for Keyleth. And they'll be like, oh, no, I disagree. I disliked her logically. I'm like, all right, man, whatever. I disagree with you, but whatever. Um, so yeah, sometimes when you're talking about political stuff, for example, there are some people, you know, J.K. Rowling has been shown the facts many, many times. She did not care about the facts.
Mm-hmm.
It's not worth debating her anymore. It's just more important to avoid her because she's bad.
And it's I mean she has a platform and a shitload of money and a ton of privilege, so like it's not in a vacuum, but sucks to be her. What a miserable way to go about your day and your life and
That's
your
the other thing.
business.
That's
And
a good
like
point. That's the other thing is, how do transphobes how do they get anything else done when they're constantly tweeting out pictures of themselves outside bathrooms and like, guys, just what are you talking about?
it's so yeah, as a person who has trans kids in my life who I care about, like it's just banana. It's just like it's clear you have no idea what you're talking about to anyone who
Right.
has any idea what you're talking about.
Which
So
again,
just
fine
stop.
if you don't know a lot about trans people, don't have a strong opinion about them. It's not That's all we're asking for.
And
It's
like,
not that
all right,
complicated.
you're afraid of spiders, whether or not the particular spider there is venomous or not. It's an irrational fear.
Yeah.
Cool. Shut up about it.
I will
Don't go to the spider enthusiast club. I don't know. I'm sure an
Right, don't go to the
arachna
zoo and start
phallic?
complaining.
Yeah, yeah. He's don't go to the spider
Yeah.
house. All right, cool. You got a
I
thing.
I will say that when I was younger, I was uncomfortable with the idea of trans related surgeries. The just idea of them, surgeries in general also, but because trans related surgeries are on specific sensitive parts of the body, they made me uncomfortable. I did not make that trans people's problems.
Right.
That's not their problem. That was my thing to work out. I got over it over time, right? I still get a little weird about it because I get a little weird about all surgeries. Just the idea, any kind of surgery talk makes my wrists go limp. My wife's C-section was not a fun experience, but it's also like it's not trans people's problem that I get a little squeamish around the ideas of surgeries on parts of my body that I think are neat. Like that's that's not their problem. Do your own work, get your head right, and get over it. It's not that hard.
God, and I'm not. Yeah, I don't know. Campaigning against like gallbladder removal or something. Like I don't know.
Right.
Like what's the deal? Like it's all very. I don't know. It's all very weird to me.
Ugh.
I have a theory. I have a theory to maintain this controversial tone,
Okay.
but direct it
Tell
back
me.
towards D&D a little bit. I have a theory, and
Ooh,
to
oh,
be
we're just
fair,
gonna spread the uprights. Okay.
it's been a long time since I've watched your video, so this I might actually just be repeating something that you have said in the past. But I think, and this might be projection too on my part, I'm willing to admit that. I think that the fact that Matt Mercer and Marisha are in a relationship creates some tension and bleed in that there is a power dynamic there, especially when you get into the system rule conversations. And as someone who's run for my wife, especially like I was an early ZM, he was an early internet celebrity, right? It's the first time his face
Uh-huh.
is out there, whatever, however famous he may have been before that. I think he has an inclination to A, take it easier on her, and then B, correct for that and make sure that he's not playing favorites. And I think there's a little bit of bleed there that putting aside misogyny, I think Mercer stands feel feel that a little bit in those early seasons, and I think that goes away. I think they figure that out
They found a
at
balanced way.
least by
I think the
season two,
problem was early in campaign one, he was harder on her than everyone else
and I
because he
think
wanted
that's
to avoid
why.
favoritism and he wanted to make sure they both wanted to make sure there was no favoritism. She's been very open that she did not want to receive favoritism. She didn't want the Windwalk spell ended. She didn't want him to make a ruling he wouldn't ordinarily make. And because of that, they tended to get in more open debates.
Hmm.
Um, the other reason why is because they changed systems. He changed his approach. He used to be a little bit more rules light, and he got a little more rules hard, rules solid on because it was more important to him because people were watching and getting very spicy about it in the comments, and
Because
it
chat
was
would
important to him.
explode if, yeah.
Right. And so we started really enforcing things to a degree where I think it was unhelpful. There are some examples that we'll talk about at some point on my channel where I'm like, you didn't need to change that just because you could have just told the chat, oh yeah, I got that wrong. You don't need to retcon things. That's where he started getting
Mm.
like, which again, he found his balance later in campaign two. I think them pre-taping helped a lot as well,
Mm.
with unfortunately COVID. But it sort of took a lot of that weight off of him. Um, there was another point I was going to make on that subject. Oh, also, and this is like a druid thing. It's happened with two of the people I've played with druids with. Sometimes people who play druids just want to like play a little bit more soft magic. Like I don't know why. There is something with Marisha and some other druid players I've encountered as well, where they're like, okay, but what if the spell worked this way? And it's like, I don't know what draws these players to druid specifically, where they're just like, what if is this spell a little flexible? But some of that is also Matt's previous allowing of rules to be a little bit more fuzzy when they were playing Pathfinder, which I think for his playstyle, he would have had to have played Pathfinder with a little bit
Oof,
more of a soft
oof.
touch because that's such a heavy system. Um, and this is Pathfinder 1 as well. I don't know how it relates to Pathfinder 2, but if it was much like 3.5, it was a very, very dense system, and that's my understanding. So he was just generally, I think, a lighter touch GM, and he got more solid mid campaign, which is hard. So, and even though his cast came with him on that journey, there was still a little bit of friction there, and especially um, for not wanting to appear to have any favoritism, it was more openly obvious. Not only with Marisha, like he had plenty of rules debates with Liam as well, but
Mm,
they weren't as conscious of the bias conversation with Liam. So he didn't tend to be as harsh. I mean, he was harsh with Liam because of his own ideas of like how stealth should work and stuff like that. But like I think it was more pronounced with her, and I think um we were all more conscious of it too. We were watching for it more.
mm,
It was sort of an unfortunate situation. I think going to pre-taping honestly helped that a lot. Like they'd found a better balance by then anyway, but going to pre-taping, like yeah, man, make your ruling, move on. Don't don't worry about retconning something in the next episode because they're not going to see it for 3 weeks anyway or however long it is. But yeah, it was just an unfortunate situation that I think I I've been it's been pointed out to me that it is not appropriate to say that he led like he was responsible for the harassment. That is not my point. But I think his hesitance to his he wanted to be very very clear that there was no um special treatment. So
mm.
he was a little firmer with her than anyone else, and people picked up on that as sort of like permission to shit on her because she clearly is getting things wrong, even though sometimes she was right, and it just took him a minute to catch it because he was more firm with her than he would be with other players. It felt like so, which sucks, you know. It's that sort of like again. I think this is gonna seem like an incredibly unkind comparison, but bear with me. Don't assume that I'm talking about Marisha the same way I talk about this character, but Jar Jar Binks from Star Wars Episode
Ah.
1 is not a well loved character.
Mm,
He should be, like, by all accounts, he should have been like, we should have been getting think pieces 15 or 20 years later that were like, here's why Jar Jar Binks was problematic. But at the time, everyone disliked him. And I think the reason why is because no one in the movie likes him,
mm,
right? The moment he
mm.
shows up, Qui-Gon's like, hey, what's this idiot piece of shit doing here?
Yeah, yeah,
And
yeah.
because you have this like nakedly negative reaction from a character that we're supposed to like, a lot of people came away from it being like, oh, I don't like him either. Now, there's the added context of, adults coming to Star Wars that grew up with it as kids and it's not what they expected. There's a lot of other stuff going on, but he was the object of so much ire. And I think partially because he's the object of ire in the movie. Like people that like characters in the movie didn't like him.
That's insightful. It's been a long time since I revisited episode one, but that makes a ton of sense to me. Like
Now
the
it's not a
narrative itself
perfect
and structure.
comparison because people also threw a lot of shit at Jake Lloyd and all the characters in the movie like Anakin. So it's not perfect. There's obviously an argument that Jar Jar Binks is problematic, and even without that, Jar Jar Binks is the slapstick character, and people didn't want that from Star Wars, and Star Wars fans get spicy in general, and it's more simple than it's more complicated than just that statement. But I think part of it, the reason why there are no real Jar Jar Binks defenders, except for people who just grew up with it in a vacuum, is because people in the movie don't like Jar Jar Binks. So when you see negative reactions to someone on screen, it does
Mm.
inform your reaction to that character as well.
That's
Also, you should rewatch Phantom Menace at some point because you'll be surprised at just what a good time Liam Neeson is having. I remember zooming through it at one point. Like I think when one of the new movies was coming out and I was rewatching the movies, I was like, I'm just gonna fast forward through Phantom Menace. And then I paused at one point. I'm like, wait a minute, is Liam Neeson having the best time ever? Wait, this movie might actually be worth watching for that. And it's not worth watching a lot of times, but it's worth taking one more shot at it and being like, oh, he's having a great time.
my
We're not going
my
to sit here and
spicy.
debate the Star Wars prequels, but
No,
I will
we're
also say that Attack of the
don't
Clones is a
stop me.
miserably terrible movie with some fantastic themes in it. That movie really is trying to say some things. It's just also not a well-made movie. Like that's the sort of
Mm.
dichotomy of the prequels in a lot of ways. It's like, oh, you're really cooking on something. Boy, I wish this was written by a person who knew what humans talk like
Well,
and directed by someone who knew how actors work.
it was never that though. Everybody, all anyone my age or older, or like slightly younger, your favorite Star Wars that you're defending against all these kids loving this new stuff had dancing teddy bear party so they could sell toys. That's my favorite. Like you were just 12 when you watched it the first time.
Oh,
And
that's a
now the
huge part of
people
it.
who watched it now they're 12 and watching it. Yeah, sure. Let them have every new generation gets Star Wars and that doesn't mean that the ones you saw were the golden age. They were jankier in some ways. There was weird, awful things happening, as well as beautiful, the perfect representation of the hero's journey and cinematic
Right.
beauty and magic. And yeah, there's good and bad in all of them.
Yeah. So
Case closed. I
some more
rest
than
my case.
others, and we'll leave it at
Yes.
that. There are some that have fewer redeeming qualities than others, but we'll leave it at that right right now because I'm sure that'll get just spicier in the comments. Like again, returning to the debate of like you don't always like things for logical reasons. Like Empire Strikes Back is the best, probably the best Star Wars movie.
Mm,
I still like A New Hope more. I can't
mm.
defend it. I just prefer it. It's just like it's cozier. I just like it more. It's not better. It is worse, but I just like it more. You know?
And man, that's cool. That's okay. I mean, I think it's a broader nerd culture thing beyond like Star Wars or D&D, but just the appreciation of like Tim Burton. My ire race is like, no, Edward Scissorhands is one. It's good. It's just not for me. Is a perfectly valid position to take. It
Yeah.
doesn't have to be bad for you not to like it.
Right. There are things that I can dislike and also have strong arguments behind. I think that I have a larger problem with the works of Zack Snyder. For example, I don't hate people who like it. It's fine. It's fine if that's what you like. I like some of his stuff more than others of it. Um, and I dislike some others of his stuff far more than I wish I did. I want to have liked more of his things. I didn't come into it to be a hater. I wish I liked more of it, but at a certain point, like Zack Snyder's actually a good example because I remember when they were the Snyder Cut stuff was just starting to like either leak out or starting to be officially. I don't remember whether it was like an official screenshot or like a leak. I don't remember, but it was in production. And the new version of Steppenwolf came out, and he was like spikier and more armored. And some Snyder fans were like, "Oh, this is much better." And I'm being like, "For why? Like, I don't for why? Like, and again, you know, the story of, I didn't watch it because I don't like Zack Snyder stuff. I didn't watch the original version either because I I did not care about Justice League in either version. There's no version of Justice League movie that I was really interested in. So this is from what I have heard is people did like the Steppenwolf storyline better, and that appeals more to me. Like that's the stuff I was more interested in. But when people were just like, "Oh, the armor looks better," and I'm like, "Oh, I if you're a diehard Snyder fan and that's how you feel, we just feel differently about movies, and that's okay. That's a very revealing moment for me to be like, oh, I can't have a conversation with you about like not to be negative, but like we're never gonna come to an alignment about why you like Zack Snyder stuff that I dislike because there's some stuff that I think is like more objective, you know. But at a certain point, if that stuff doesn't bother you, if you know, I think it is a contradiction. For example, that Batman is debating whether or not he should kill Superman, but he's also uh murdering humans in the car chase scene. And like if you're already killing people, then making your whole storyline about whether you should kill somebody doesn't work. But if you're just enjoying the vibes and doesn't bother you, then you're never going to care about that. And that's okay. Like what you like, I don't really care. It's just not for me. And that's enough. That's the end of that conversation. Again, I can and will say more about Zack Snyder movies at some point on my channel or on one of my channels, whatever. But like at a certain point, sometimes it is subjective. And yes, you can have the sort of the things that really bother you on a fundamental level. But if somebody likes them and they don't bother them or they like those parts, like they like that Batman kills people, for example, I don't prefer that, but fine. If that's what you like, which clearly Zack Snyder does, then okay, that's fine. Not my thing.
Uh,
That's
yeah.
okay.
I a lot of the time it's like arguing about like is cilantro good? You know, like oh this
Yeah.
person's genetically predisposed to think it tastes like soap. I'm not going to get them to add it to their burrito, nor should I even have any vested interest in doing so. But personally, my preference, and maybe it's because of some, genetic marker, is I like internal consistency in my storytelling.
But like it's also, you know, something like The Last Jedi. Since we're on the Star Wars subject, when we're talking about
Ah,
polarizing movies, let's dig into it. We don't have to spend a lot of time on it, but like I personally like the stuff with Rey and Kylo and Luke and Snoke. I like that stuff. I am fascinated by some of the reasons people don't. Right? There is definitely like a really fundamental like, oh, people did not want X. And some of that really interests me. Like, why are we willing to accept old angry man Kratos and old angry man Bruce Wayne and Batman Beyond, but not Luke Skywalker? Like, where is the disconnect there? Is it because of the
mhm.
expanded universe? Is it because of it's been more time since we saw him? Like, what are all the different reasons? I think that's interesting. I also think the other storylines in that movie have huge execution problems. Overall, I think that movie is fine. I feel like I'm the only person on the internet who thinks that movie's fine. Everyone else is like, that movie's amazing, or it's the worst thing that's ever happened. That movie was so polarizing, it turned some people into literal Nazis. So like I think it is it is difficult to be the one person who's like, it's fine. I really, really liked all the stuff with Rey and Luke and Kylo and Snoke. I'm interested in some of the reasons people did not. I think some of the reasons are bigotry, but also some people I think had very strong reactions to seeing Luke different, and some of them, and this is a much broader topic, thought Snoke was going to be a big deal because there's no world building in The Force Awakens, and that for some reason people thought Snoke was a mystery. He wasn't. He was just as well developed as the Emperor was in the original trilogy, but they expected more. And that's a whole conversation about the fact that Star Wars changed in between the original trilogy and the sequel trilogy, which is not worth going into right now. But like, you're not going to convince me to dislike that subplot. I liked it. You're also not going to necessarily convince me that the I have different problems with the other subplots than some other people do, but I still don't. I think the other ones have some severe execution problems, which I can maybe talk about some other day in a video. But man, it's hard to make a negative Force Awakens video or Last Jedi video without being lumped in with some people that I am not cool with.
Man, like I wish we didn't kill Nuance. I miss that
Yeah,
guy.
yeah. Nuance was cool.
Nuance is pretty cool. We had some good times together. I miss him. I mean, I've been actively not saying it for like 90 minutes now. The horse race through the casino while there's a life and death
Okay, I
battle
want to talk about that.
happening.
I'll talk about that scene because I think there's a
Please,
Robert
please
Rodriguez
do.
quote. There's first of all, the visual effects in that scene are not great, but we've forgiven bad visual effects in movies that we liked more. Right?
Hmm.
There are
Hmm.
absolutely Marvel movies that I have enjoyed that have worse visual effects. So I don't blame it all on the visual effects. There's a Robert Rodriguez quote where he says, if a scene is not working, you don't cut that scene, you cut the scene that comes before it. I think the problem with the Canto Bite scene has nothing to do with the horse races. The problem with Canto Bite, my whole problem with that entire storyline is that it is trivially easy for Benicio del Toro to get out of his cage, and he gets out and just lets them all out, and suddenly we're just riding on convenience. He's just like wakes up and he's like, oh okay, and he gets out of the cage, and and we always could have done that, and that gets a bad taste in our mouth for what follows after because it doesn't feel earned. And what follows
Hmm.
after is the horse race through the casino, which also visually doesn't look very good. So you've kind of lost your audience for reasons I don't think we fully articulated. So that's that's I don't know how to make a video about that without being lumped in with anti Last Jedi people who are not my favorite corner of the internet. But I do think that that Benicio del Toro scene could have been so much better if he just not been in the same cell with them and he'd asked for like the necklace from Rose. Can you give that to me, or give him something else? And he uses that to break himself out, and he breaks it. And so then later, when he asks for something from Rose to burn out a chip later on in the movie, it feels more significant because we've already seen him do this before with something else and it broke. So you've actually like made your whole movie better, but also
Hmm.
fixed the scene that I think breaks the Finn and Rose storyline. I think that actual problem comes like 5 minutes earlier because that's kind of spoils the storyline because we're checked out by that point. After the horse race scene, we're not really. It doesn't feel like we're on the same page as the movie anymore, and I think it's because it happened a little bit earlier. Also,
And
while we're on the subject, the problem with the Poe storyline is not that she doesn't tell him the plan. The problem with the Poe storyline for me is that after he does this treason, she goes, he's She goes, I like him. And I'm like, no, you wouldn't like him. He should go to jail. He did a treason. Like, the
He
reason we
did
have
a
to like you
treason.
now is because you're about to do a heroic sacrifice, so the movie's trying to make us like you. You could have just been someone who didn't agree with him. He did a treason. You should think he should go to jail. That would be fine for this character, but now we can't do that because she has to do a heroic sacrifice. So she has to like our main character, even though, no, you would not. You absolutely would not. It's okay. Not everyone in a Star Wars movie has to like each other, if even if they're on the same side. There's a whole TV show about that, is my understanding. People seem to like that one a lot. Stick to your guns. Just let her be not likable. But also, she had pink hair, so she was uh, painted by a corner of the internet that I don't agree with as uh, a target of their ire for that reason, and it made her a convenient scapegoat. But also, like, she does become a worse written character the moment the treason happens because she's like, I like him. I'm like, no, you wouldn't. What are you talking about? What are you doing? No, stick to your guns. But I like the Ray stuff in that movie, and that's fine if you don't. You know, I get it.
I mean,
I
if
don't
you
agree with
don't,
all of it.
well,
I don't agree
whatever.
with the Mary Sue argument necessarily because I think stories have different points of conflict, and internal conflict is not the same as external conflict. But who gives a shit? It's a fucking space wizards movie.
They're space wizards the whole time.
Yeah,
And again, I just
I did
always
not.
come back to
I'll say I
Ewoks.
did not care for the third movie in that trilogy. By the time the Emperor was just a Dementor, I had surrendered. I was like, sure, whatever.
Yeah.
We're doing space wizard stuff at this point. Like this part's fine. That
I
movie's worse
remember
than all the
I
others.
remember
So whatever.
sitting I remember sitting in the theater watching that and
I
being
mean, I don't
like,
mean it's worse than all the other Star Wars movies. I think Rise of Skywalker is worse than all the other movies.
it's and it's
It's real
all
bad.
and it's all genetics and midichlorians back in it, which I thought
Also,
we were getting
hold
away
on, while
from.
we're on the
And like,
subject,
yeah.
first of all, if you're gonna pose cloning as an argument for why the Emperor is alive, he shouldn't still be decayed. But also, when they say cloning, a secret only the Sith knew, what do you mean only the Sith knew? There was a whole planet of clones.
There was a
They
whole
attacked one time. Do you remember the movie?
it was
It was
called
the
The
only Star
War.
Wars movie that's better than this one.
Oh my goodness. But yeah, I
I don't think J.J.
remember
Abrams has
like
been it was good at making Star Wars movies.
no, no. That was
Made a
the
great Mission
moment
Impossible movie. I'll say that.
we're under a Tom Cruise embargo in this house. One day I'm going to sneak out and watch all of them because of the stunts. And like, say what you will
You
about
know
the
what?
man, he's going to die
Those
doing
movies
what
are
he loves.
genuinely good. Those are genuinely good movies. I didn't see the seventh one because I had a little wee baby, but I still want to. It
Oh man. But all right,
was a
so this has
hard
been talking
summer
Star
to have a.
Wars.
It was a hard summer last year to have a baby because then I just had to sit there and watch people spoil Deadpool and Wolverine for me. Talk about people being weird online. People were so excited to spoil that Deadpool movie because A, they were excited to be excited about a Marvel movie for a change. I think that's a
Well,
big factor. And B,
valid.
I don't think Deadpool always has the coolest fans. So I don't think they were. But then fucking Marvel spoiled something from Thunderbolts on their own channel. So like, I don't know, man. I don't know what we're doing anymore. I guess I just have to not follow YouTube when a movie comes out that I'm interested in.
Man, I have not seen Thunderbolts, but I'm hearing good things. It's like, is this am I coming
Yeah,
back? Am I coming back home now?
I'm hearing
Maybe.
good things too. I have liked more of the Marvel things than other people have, but I also get it. You know,
Yeah.
it's fine. I haven't liked them all.
Yeah, it's very easy to underappreciate what an achievement like an end game was. Like
Well, again, talk
no
about
one has ever made 12 movies interlink and come together and have that many protagonists and have it be satisfying if you want to
yeah.
be as neutral as possible, let alone like
I mean,
really
I think
freaking good.
Endgame's problem is that it was too satisfying
Ah,
to because people did not want to watch more movies after that. They wanted
hmm
it was hard to see people see that franchise keep going. But also,
hmm
again, we're talking about emotional reactions that don't match up to logic. I've saw so many people be like when they announced this aged poorly, but when they announced the Kang dynasty was coming and Secret Wars was coming, and people were like, "Oh, now we know that they're going somewhere with this." I'm like, what do you mean? First of all, the multiverse has been mentioned in like half of these movies or TV shows. So like we knew they were going here. But also, That wasn't how it worked in old school Marvel. Old school Marvel, 10 years earlier, whatever. But in phases 1, 2, and 3, we didn't really. It didn't feel like it was obviously building to something for so much of it. We didn't really like for those first two phases. We didn't really know that Infinity War. We thought it could be, but we didn't know for sure it was coming until, I mean, they announced it right before Avengers 2 came out. Maybe when Thor 2 came out, and we knew this was an Infinity Stone. So, like, okay, they're probably building up to that. We saw Thanos at the end of Thor 1 or Avengers 1. So, like, they were teasing it, but it wasn't all the time pervasive. It was about as pervasive as it was with the multiverse in early phase 3. Feel however you want to feel about those projects. I think that was more the problem. Like, you can't tell me you didn't know the multiverse was coming when, like, then they're like, oh, we now they know building up to Kang. What are you talking about? He was in the Loki season 1 finale a year earlier. Like
Hmm.
before they announced the Kang dynasty, we knew they were building to this. What are you talking about? Of course they're building up to Kang. But for it felt different because we had just seen Infinity War and Endgame happen, and it felt like we had really ramped up to something, and everything was connected and everything paid off. And you forgot that it didn't really start that way. So when you're starting off a new property the same way, or property new era the same way, it feels different, and that's
Hmm.
okay. It can just feel different, and you don't like it that it feels different because it doesn't feel as satisfying. But logically, it was, you know, they were clearly going somewhere. It was very obvious that they were where they were going, and it just didn't feel as connected as it did at the end of the Infinity Saga. So it felt like they were spinning their wheels when no, it was the same. The actual problem with modern Marvel is that, for example, with Thunderbolts coming out, that's for every character in that movie. That is the second, or in one case, third time they have appeared in 6 years. That's the problem with modern Marvel. The problem with modern Marvel is that you used to go 2 years before seeing someone. The longest gap was 2 years, maybe like 5 or 6 movies in between seeing Hulk in Avengers and then Hulk popped up again in Thor 3. But otherwise, people were showing up pretty regularly. You only had to wait a year or two to see someone pop up again. We haven't seen Shang-Chi again since his movie came out. No
I
one has
understand.
appeared in Marvel more than twice, not counting What If, because those characters like that literally cannot move the story forward. Like by definition, it cannot. No one has appeared more than twice until this year, when finally Yelena is in a third thing. That's the actual problem. It is taking too long for there to be any payoff. For us to like, if you want Marvel to feel like all interconnected, the problem is it feels too spread out right now because
Hmm.
it feels like comic books where you put out a bunch of comics and like, yeah, maybe She Hulk just stays in her own corner. Well, the problem with that is that you can't make She-Hulk movie TV shows as often as you make She-Hulk comics. Just like there's a very different property. You get around that with the movies being all kind of connected, but now that's not happening. So Doctor Strange has appeared twice in 6 years, and that feels bad. Like, where is he? What's going on? So then it starts really pulling at threads. Wait, why doesn't Doctor Strange show up in WandaVision? Wait, why doesn't Doctor Strange show up in Moon Knight? What we're really asking is, where are our friends that you told us that we should keep watching? Where are all the people that you said that we liked? We have too many characters. And I like a lot of these characters. I like more of these characters than most people do. But it feels like we're not getting enough time with any of them, because there are too many projects that you can there are too many characters for the number of projects you can actually make per year, you know?
Right. I think they're a victim of their own success in that
Hmm.
sense, where I think
Yep.
had they, this is kind of why I fell off comics in general, because like they know, all right, we landed it, we got to start from zero now, and like okay, it's a multiverse, and so none of that mattered in a sense. That's how it felt, at least to teenage Ryan. But
Hmm.
it's the Wizards of the Coast problem too. Like this is a new edition, but it's totally not. It's the same thing you know and love. So keep giving us
Right.
money the whole time. But we are also going to start over because we have to. Because good stories have satisfying endings, and then
Yeah.
you tell a new story. But that new story might not earn us the same amount of dollars. So we're going to try to have it both ways and kind of miss the mark in my opinion. And that's not. I don't think I'm alone in that.
And again, people can feel differently. I liked She-Hulk more than some people did. I liked about half of Ms. Marvel. Um, I liked Eternals at the time. I haven't rewatched it. It maybe doesn't hold up, but at the time, I thought it was a breath of fresh air. But like, there has been a lot of there have been some duds and there have been some stinkers.
Mm.
You know,
I like that you make
that's
that
definitely true
distinction.
too.
Actually, I like
Yeah,
those are both in your in your
yeah. There
ranking.
were some that sort of like, you know, I will say that I probably liked some of Falcon and Winter Soldier, but I also feel like there's a moment when you're about halfway through episode 2 and they do the couples counseling scene between the two of them and they make them talk to each other and it's like, "Oh, we're really having to do a lot of work to justify the two of these characters being in a show together and we're already halfway through episode 2 of 6. Maybe you didn't actually have an idea for the show. Maybe this is actually like a fundamental problem with this show is that you didn't actually have an idea for what would bring them together because it didn't make any sense, and you're doing a lot of work to make this make sense, and also that show is worse written than the rest of the MCU. uh like just like on a fundamental writing level of like it's much clumsier at handling its interconnected stuff in a way that I personally was offended by because that's what Marvel's been so good at. So for him to be like, "Oh, that's the notebook that I saw Steve Rogers write in 10 years ago. Like, I remember this from this movie that everyone likes." I'm like, "Guys, you're normally much better at this. This is not how you talk do your interconnected stuff." And obviously the Flag Smashers as a whole, uh justifiably a whole discourse about bad writing of villains. But I'm not even as interested in that as I am like, no, they used to handle the interconnected stuff really, really well, and that show doesn't do it well. But like even like the stuff that I like more than other people do, or I didn't like as much as some other people did, it's like it's still the fundamental problem is we haven't seen our buddies in a long, long time. Like
Mm.
my wife, I remember has not seen much from post Endgame because her big worry was, wait, I don't know if I want another Avengers thing. Like I liked Tony and I don't want them to replace him with some other character. Like who would be the new Iron Man? And I'm like, yeah, that's a good question. But now the problem is like, boy, are you gonna do an Avengers movie where it's been like 5 years since we've seen some of these characters? I don't know that that's gonna be really satisfying in a lot of cases because that's just a little too spread out. Which the solution isn't, you know. And part of it is they had to make so much stuff for Disney Plus. They had a mandate to like flood us with stuff, which it's just another example of how capitalism is the real villain in all of these stories. But anyway, this wasn't even the part that you wanted to do in this video.
Hey, I'm content. I'm content, and this has been Nerd Talk. Uh,
Nerd talk,
join us next time.
nerd talk, and
uh,
politics.
and politics. It's my fault. I mean, I opened the door to. I could have just started with the dice rolling, but sometimes
Hey, that's okay.
you gotta get real. You gotta get
Yeah,
real.
that's all right.
And sometimes you gotta throw down on your favorite Star Wars and least favorite Star Wars. Mike,
You
thank
will
you.
always be able to trust that I have opinions about Star Wars.
It was a good time. I enjoyed it. Sometimes, you sit down to play D&D and you just hang out with people, and like that's cool. That's fine.
I actually
As
don't
long
like
as
that.
everyone's on
I
the
actually
same
don't like
page.
when people just sit in the like. If you want to keep chatting, like do it around the pizza. Once you sit down at the table, we should actually be playing D&D.
It's game time.
That's my hot take.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a good. That's why, circling all the way back, I really like you got me thinking about recapping again, which is kind of my okay, gang, we're playing D&D now, especially
Hmm.
like we're waiting for everyone to show up or sign in or whatever. Like we're already in the space. I'm not gonna light a candle at the game shop. There's it's hard to like
Right.
have that ceremonial aspect. I can't dim the lights. So it's like when last we saw our heroes, like let's go like this, we're playing now.
Well,
So
and
to
I think
like
I actually
start there again.
was reminded of that when I saw Mystic Arts DM's video about rituals at the
Mm,
table,
mm.
and one of his was sort of like how do you open the game, and that I think got me thinking as well about the recap, which I'd already been sort of thinking about, but definitely got me on that as well. So for those who haven't checked out Mystic Arts DM's channel, go check it out.
Absolutely. They are about to spearhead the 5 room dungeon jam, which will be done by the time you're seeing this. But go check it
Yes,
out. If you, like Mike, want to make a mega dungeon, a bunch of awesome nerds are getting together and making 5 rooms times, I don't know. I think there's about 7,000 people, 8,000 people now. I don't know. Maybe there's 100 of us.
there's a
But
lot of people in that group though. There's at least 50, probably more YouTubers involved in that.
And that's just the ones who are like in that central hub. Like I'm sure there's
Yeah,
people, there's like satellite people. It's gonna be very cool. It's gonna be very cool to see just everybody's take on like a very smart condensed concept. I'm very excited to
yeah.
see you're cooking something up, I imagine, for
I
that.
am. I need to figure out how I'm gonna do the maps. Because I need to figure out what's the best way to do that. But yeah, I'm just had a breakthrough today when I was on a walk with my baby, where I was like,
Nice.
oh, that's because I'm actually just gonna flesh out the rest of a dungeon that I started my players on, um, in my last session. So it's like, oh, if I turn the last room that I'd prepped into the first room of a 5-room dungeon, that'll actually work perfectly. So
Nice. Two birds, one stone. Love it.
exactly, do some GM prep and video prep at the same time. That's the synergy that we're looking for.
Everybody go check out Supergeek Mike if you want more cultural commentary and just
Yes.
D&D goodness. You get it all for the price of nothing. Down below, click the link.
Thank you
Mike,
so much
thank you.
for having me on.
Absolutely,
And I
dude.
rolled a 19.
19. Hey everybody, this is the game as no, I'm kidding. I'm not gonna start.
I just wanted credit. I just wanted to see what would happen if I rolled the die.
That die is loaded. You've been rolling hot.
I have been rolling hot on this one, but I've had it for like 18 years. So
Oh, that was your first one. That's why
this
you
is
held
my
on
first
to it.
one. Yeah.
Never forget
Robin's
your
egg
first.
blue.
Nice. All right, dude. Thank you so much. Appreciate you. Appreciate everyone at home watching, hanging out, listening. Be kind, have fun. Bye.
Bye.